Good evening. Welcome. Tonight we're talking about trauma. Hey, Terrell. Hey, Tasha. Got the T's on. Terrell, Tasha. I can't see. Somebody else came on. Hey, Michelle. I'm about to bring you up now. Hey, I'm AJ Nichols. All right, so it's my first time, so I gotta. Michelle, can you send me a request? Because I don't think I know how to add people in. Can you send me a request, please, to join? If you hit the little camera, I'm trying to see how. Oh, never mind. I just found it. I just invited you to the live. Yay! Hey, Michelle.
I was about to say, I'm green to the live, so I'm like, maybe she can figure out how to get me.
I thought about it late. I was like, wait, let me find it because I have never done it. So everybody that's on now, hi Kaya Nicole. This is introduce yourself if you don't mind, so that people can know what you do, who you are. Tell us a little bit about you personally as well as professionally.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. I said my birth certificate name is Michelle, but most people know me as Miss HJ. I am a educator. I've been in education for about 10 years now. And I also own a consultancy called Why We Leap Consulting LLC, where we support individuals in living a trauma-informed life, because we want people to understand that trauma is not a death sentence. It's a wonderful process that gives us a beautiful skill set that we can use for our success. So I'm very, very glad to be here. And hello.
I'm so glad you could join. I love the way you said that. Just making it a beautiful process versus how it's so often gets like a negative connotation. Like if you've been through something, people look at you negatively, but it's so many things we can learn from going through different things. So I'm so glad you said it like that. Put a positive spin on it, because so many times it's just looked down at, and people are looked down on a lot of times based on things that they go through.
Yeah, been there.
And you have to be very strong to be able to get through those things. So I'm so glad you said that.
Wonderful.
So tonight, y'all, hey, Felicia, hey, Sean Basket, hey, Janae, my sister up here, hey, Sean Vegas. So tonight we are talking about trauma. We're tracing trauma. We're talking about ways that sometimes trauma can be passed down to us. Again, we know that, and we're specifically focusing on Black trauma because a lot of times, and we've seen this even recently on with the shooting that happened in Buffalo. A lot of times, trauma in Black people is seen one way versus white people another way, right? So even with verbiage, and we want to have control over our narrative as well, because I can't remember the guy's name, but the shooter, the murderer, the racist, he is called an 18-year-old young man, or a teenager, while people like Mike Brown and other young men that have been killed and harmed were called 18-year-old men. And I believe that even has a traumatic effect on our community, because our children are seen as grown men and grown women, while we look at our counterparts, they're seen as, oh, he had it rough coming up. Oh, he was just struggling to find himself. But our children and our adults are not looked at in that same light. So even that's the whole point tonight, is changing the narrative to know that trauma is something that can happen to many of us, has happened to many of us. Some of us may not even realize we've been through traumatic situations, and that we're still human. We still deserve to be loved. There are ways that we can get through it, right? Miss HJ, I know she has some practical ways that we can get through that trauma, identify that trauma, and have practical, healthy ways that we can even navigate that trauma as well. So my cousin is also joining, so I'm about to invite him up. Y'all give me 1 second. Y'all, when I tell you. All right. So Alex, I just hit the invite for you. So once you accept it, it'll take a few seconds, and then you'll be up here too. So we have Miss H again, a resilience expert. We have my cousin coming in, and I want to be very clear. We know that the Black experience is not monolithic, so all of us do not have the same experiences. However, we do want different voices so that someone may be able to identify with you and give you some encouragement and let you know you're not alone. Like, you're just not alone, and we deserve healing. You don't have to live in a certain mindset or a certain space where you feel like you have to deal with this trauma by yourself. You're not alone. There's help. There's love. So we're gonna hop in. I'm not gonna talk the whole time because we have guests, and that is the point of having guests. So I was trying to wait a little bit before, because I was gonna direct the first question to you, but I was trying to wait for Sweat to get up here because I didn't want to start, and then we have to. Let me try to resend the. I don't know if it's letting me. Okay, there it is. So I don't want us to start, because once we start talking, I want the conversation to flow. So that we can all just be in here together. And I'm also gonna pull up. Let me see. I'm trying to get him up here. But in the meantime, I do have a couple questions for you. And if you're in the comments and you have questions, definitely drop them in there. If you
Yeah.
want to ask, hey,
What's up? What's up?
what's up? Thanks for coming on.
All right. So, we just got a house, so I'm still unpacking and all that good stuff.
Congrats.
What's going on, everyone?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Make sure my lighting is straight.
Yeah, and once you get that straight, can you please just introduce yourself? You can share whatever you want to share, just a little bit, introduce yourself and a little bit about you, and then we can kind of just hop in.
Okay. A man of many hats. My name is Alex, Alexander Sweat. I'm a junior. Um, my son, Trey, that's the third. People know me as Hunted Stack. I used to do music. Um, Mostly everyone in the city know me as Sweat. So that's who I am. A father, a husband, son, cousin, uncle, hard worker, all the good stuff.
Yes, thank y'all. Again, thank y'all for coming on. If y'all don't know, if you haven't heard from the Sweat part yet, Alex is my cousin. So family right here. So I'm so glad he
Right.
could come on. So the first question is for Miss HJ. What do you want me to call you, Miss HJ or Michelle? What do you prefer?
I'm cool with either one. When I say I hear
Okay.
both all day, every day. So whatever you're comfortable with, I'm cool.
Okay. So Miss HJ, here's some things I want to kind of start here so all of us can hop into this. I want to hear your perspective initially. So I've read some articles. I've read many articles that point to the fact that intergenerational trauma, like trauma, can be passed down through generations. So from your experiences, and from your knowledge, is there any validity to, like, even things that we never experienced, we may inherit from like our ancestors or from our parents based on what they went through?
Absolutely. I actually just did a workshop recently with a women's group called What We Don't Heal, We Spill.
Mm.
And a lot of the experiences that we have, particularly as parents, because I was talking to a group of mothers at the time, we involuntarily project a lot of our experiences onto our children, because kids come into the world as a blank slate. All they know is what we expose them to. Just like I was sharing with that group about for racism, for example. Children aren't born racist. They're taught those tendencies. We're taught to be afraid of people for certain reasons. And a lot of those experiences children don't have. So if a parent drills into them that brown means fear, then that child's going to take that experience with them into the world. And anytime they have a negative exchange with someone of color, they're going to tie it back to that memory. Brown means fear. So some people do it intentionally. And then sometimes things happen to us and it causes us to project our trauma unintentionally as well. For example, I dealt with molestation growing up. And so I'm very, very cautious of my 7-year-old daughter being around men. And I have to constantly remind myself that every man's not a threat. and that I have to make it so that she has a healthy understanding of boundaries with strangers, but that doesn't translate into fear that creates trauma for her. So I 100% agree with that statement. When we don't check it and we're not mindful of it and we're not consciously working, because it's a process. That healing is not a destination, it is a journey. So we're constantly going to have to check ourselves to make sure that we're not pouring our own unchecked issues onto people around us. And the people we see the most are our children, which is that next generation. So a lot of times that transfer is so involuntary. And a lot of times people don't even know it's taking place. I meet with families and families are like, wow, I didn't know that I poured that into my child. I didn't know she was afraid because of what I had said or what I had done. So we definitely had to be very mindful of that. That is so real.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think with that, we have to be able to identify our issues in order to not. And we also not need to give ourselves grace because there's some things we just don't know. So coming to people like you, going to professionals, counselors, it's been so cliche or so, it's been so taboo is what I'm trying to say in the Black community. Like something has to be wrong or you have to be crazy to go see a professional. But having conversations like this, speaking to people that professionally navigate this world shows us that, okay, don't be too hard on yourself as a parent, but you do need to be intentional about when you're teaching your kids, why are you teaching them that? Is it from a place of hurt or what are you doing? And then if you have done something, what are some ways that you can improve that or kind of pivot so that you can deal with it healthily? So I definitely appreciate that knowledge that you have given us. And then along with that, I guess to kind of piggyback off that, I wanted to ask Sweat, as a Black male, did you have like a safe space, or could you identify like when you were younger a safe space where you could like express yourself or talk about how you felt freely without like feeling judged or without having like some pushback from like how you felt?
Well, I can honestly say, my safe space was music. Um, I ran to music, and that was my way of expressing my feelings or how I felt. Um, Pent up aggression, you know, if anyone that, knows me or know of my music, it was always aggressive. It was always after I released music, it was just like it's like a burden off my shoulders. Um, my safe space was with people with like me, you know what I'm saying? Coming from where we came from, Franklin, Virginia. A lot of people don't know where that's at, but it's like a small community where, it's like, it's like-minded people, nothing to get into but trouble. So, you know, that's why I think a lot of us and a lot of young guys now still do that. They don't have the place where they can go and talk or be mentored. I mean, we didn't have mentors like that. Our mentors was basically doing the same thing we were doing, you know what I'm saying? So in that sense, like, no, not really. You know, we didn't have like I mean, we had boys and girls club, but well, nobody going there. We reverted to the streets and people that was like us, that looked like us, that probably went through the same problems, or talking to the fellas, and they understood it a little bit more. And the same thing goes on today.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, of course, I have not had the same experience. However, I think a lot of times in Black families, we do not have that space, especially as Black boys, because many times we teach our sons, suck it up, be a man, don't cry, and there's no space to really tell how you feel. Even Black women or Black girls, it's often, you're going to be all right, or if you get angry, you don't know a healthy way to express that. And as you get older, if you do not know a healthy way to express it, it starts coming out as aggression. It starts coming out as you being violent. It starts coming out as you drinking a lot. It starts coming out as you looking for an outlet because you don't know what to do with how you're feeling. And Michelle, I don't know if you want to speak to that as well, from your professional opinion or from your experience. If you want to speak on that as well, how we as children don't always have safe spaces or healthy ways to express ourselves, and how that can later show as trauma. We can start having trauma because we haven't processed things properly.
Absolutely. Not having a safe space kind of compounds the issue. Because if somebody has experienced underlying trauma, and trauma is a wide spectrum word, so it can mean everything from neglect, physical abuse, mental abuse. There's trauma that results from even having incarcerated parents, absentee guidance in the home. So when you think about all the things that is considered kind of commonplace in the Black community, single parent homes are more common in the Black community than a lot of us realize. Those kinds of things bring about trauma. And when you have trauma, the very first thing that you lose is a sense of safety and security. And if you then don't have a space where you can physically go to regain that sense of balance and that safety and security, then you just continue to compound or re-trigger over and over and over again. And it reminds me of this research that I follow by a doctor by the name of Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, who conducted the original studies around trauma. And one of the things that she talked about was how when children don't have that safe space, it's like they're in the forest and there's a bear coming after them. We're supposed to have a trauma response. We're supposed fight or flight. We're supposed to be on the move. But what happens when that bear comes home every night and you're constantly being triggered over and over because there's no safe space? Yeah. When that happens, we're talking about physical and mental damages that result over their whole entire childhood and development. So when we finally do catch it as adults, when they finally do have that teacher they can go to at school and talk to, or that person in the neighborhood who's moved in who can now give you somewhere to go when mom and dad are fighting. Think about how many years of not feeling safe now has to be undone. Right. How much how you have to fight to establish that trust. So the longer you go without that safety, it makes it more and more difficult to establish the trust that's necessary to even begin the healing process, which is one of the most difficult barriers we face when working with individuals who are suffering from trauma.
Thank you. That's a good point that you made, because sometimes people think that, you can go to 2 therapy sessions and you feel good and now it's done. But you have to remember, we kind of touched on this. Sweat was up there last week. We kind of touched on this. I'm in year, 37, still working through year 6. And that's not an overnight. So for anybody that's up here, it feels like, it's going to take too long. Like, it's a process. So don't feel bad if you've been to a month worth of therapy, or you've been using practices that you've given for 2 days and you still getting frustrated, or you still feel like you're messing up. It's a process. So give yourself grace to know that you're battling things that you may not have been able to overcome at year 6. So don't be so hard on yourself, because it's been 20, 30, 40 years and you got to work through those decades now of things that you had to deal with. So please, 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 that's like, please don't beat yourself up if you do not get it right the first couple of times, because you're working through a lot of the time.
Yes.
I think identifying what trauma is because some people think trauma, they think just an overall bad experience, you know what I'm saying, getting beat and this, that, and third. Trauma could be something from being let down, you know what I'm saying, or being put down. Like if you express your dreams to someone and, they shoot them down every time. That's a part of trauma too. So it's like identifying trauma. We have to identify what our trauma is, you know what I'm saying, go forward with that. A lot of us don't know, Yeah.
That's a good point. And that's such an individualistic thing, because like you said, so many people think, trauma has to be, I was getting beat every night. But maybe you grew up in a two-parent home. No one ever abused you, but nobody ever really listened to you either. That's trauma, because now
Yeah.
you're forming relationships and you're afraid to express yourself because nobody ever listened to you. So now you can't even talk to your partner, or you can't talk or speak up at work because the 8-year-old inside of you remembers, no one ever heard me, no one ever recognized me, no one ever saw me. So it's not always this big dramatic, I guess, in a sense, thing, or your house caught on fire, you lost everything. That's terrible. But some of us think we had a pretty normal life. But if we really go back to the root of things, if we didn't feel heard, if we didn't feel seen, if maybe we thought a sibling was treated better than we were, or it's so many. Like, we could be up here all night talking about it, but it's so individualistic, and you really know when you start doing the soul searching and start digging into, okay, when that happened, I was really hurt. And now every person that looks like that or sounds like that or says that phrase to me, I get triggered, right? And that word is used so loosely now, but I'm talking about, like, really, like, something happens and it takes you back to that moment where you initially felt, however, invisible or hurt or sad. So it doesn't always have to be this big grand thing that happened. It could be even little subtle things that make you feel like unimportant or like disregarded as well. So don't think that, oh, I shouldn't be upset about it. No, if you are still dealing with that, that is that's trauma. So, I think, can y'all still hear me? I forgot to put my phone on do not disturb. Yeah, okay. I had to make sure I did that real quick. So next question, and I really want this to flow like a conversation, but next, I did want to ask, and we kind of flowing into this anyway. Michelle, or how can untreated or unacknowledged, because we kind of touching on that now anyway, how can unacknowledged trauma impact
I couldn't hear you.
friendships?
Okay. I lost you
Oh,
after how
I got a phone call. Okay, I'm
you're fine. You're
sorry.
back now.
I was asking, I put my phone on do not disturb, but the call still came through. How can untreated or unacknowledged trauma affect a person's relationships, whether it be with their children, with a romantic partner, with a friend, with anyone? How can untreated or unacknowledged trauma affect your ability to build or be in relationship?
On so many levels. Like I said before, the very, very first thing we notice with especially younger people is the trust issue. I don't want to open up. I don't want to talk about it. And because one, if they came from the kind of household I came from, what happened in the house, stay in the house. Because you can't get mom and daddy in trouble. You can't talk about that stuff. Not thinking about what it's doing to you, having to hold it in. So establishing that space where children can actually trust you to have those conversations and to know you're not going to go tell mom they told you, and that you really just want to try to help them work through that process. That's a very, very difficult thing. And by nature, as human beings, we are social. We are meant to have connections with other people. And by not being able to have those, what we call safe connections, it actually creates a space where the child becomes constantly triggered, because you may say something and they want to tell you so bad, but they just can't. And that leaves them sitting there reeling, thinking about what just took place. When I've been talking to adults, on the other hand, we get a little more nitty gritty with them. So what I always try to help individuals remember is that if you're carrying trauma into a relationship, you need to be in a space where you can acknowledge that what you're really offering that person is a threesome, because they getting ready to deal with you. They get ready to deal with themselves, and they get ready to deal with all the baggage that you're bringing with you. And I say that as a person who, me and my husband have been together almost 20 years. And the 17-year-old he started dating was damaged. And a lot of that damage showed up as we grew up into 30-something year old, a 30-something year old married couple. So he had to deal with me not wanting to be touched in a certain way. He had to deal with me having to figure out how to trust another person enough to have access to everything that was important to me, from finances to my emotions to my private life with my family. And that took time. That took breaking down barriers. That took me having to understand that it was safe to have those conversations with him. Because sometimes we're okay with giving our body to a person faster than we're okay with giving them our trauma. Way faster. And so having to step into a place where you can say, oh, I can do more with this person than lay with them or have a surface conversation with them. In order to have a true relationship with a person, they have to have access to parts of you that you may not be comfortable with. So creating those relationships is hard for many people to sustain over the long haul when they haven't dealt with those traumas, because it forces you to be vulnerable. And that is not something that is easy for a person who has experienced trauma, because being vulnerable to some extent is what allowed the trauma to enter their life to begin with.
You just dropped so many gems on us right now. And I think it's so easy because people in the comments like, preach, wow, because it's so, I believe many of us can go back to moments where we knew we were bringing that baggage, or we can go back to a conversation or argument we had with somebody. We know our baggage was talking and our baggage was there for that conversation.
The baggage is so loud. It's so loud.
Because that baggage will come up, especially when people say certain things, like you said, certain phrases that may remind you of the person that hurt you, or may take you back to a situation, and now you flipping out or doing whatever to them because it triggered you to the point where it puts you back in that space. And we've had a conversation previously about vulnerability, but that is like such a necessity for a like you said, more than surface level relationship. If you really want to have a real connection, you have to be able to bear it all and be like, this is it, this is me. I have to be willing to be open, and sometimes that also means you have to be open to possibly being hurt. But we got to navigate through that trauma and know that even when we are hurt, the person that we're with, whether it be a husband, a spouse, a child, a lot of times they're not intentionally hurting us. It's just, again, that baggage coming up that we may not have fully dealt with. And Sweat, you look like you wanted to jump in on that one. You look like you had some, or were you just thinking?
I did want to chime in a little bit. Men have baggage too. I mean, I'm just gonna cut it out because sometimes men, we do come into a situation where we can't wear our hearts on our sleeve. We're conditioned to come into the situation and take. Like, okay, she been through this. Use me as a punch bag. But sometimes, even myself, in certain situations, I've been hurt. You know what I'm saying? I've been hurt myself, and I'm not scared to say, like, hey, like, you know what I'm saying? I've been in love with someone and they tore me to shreds. I'm not ashamed to say it, but it made me a better person. Now, the thing about that is, being in my marriage, going on 6 years, we got married in our 30s, both of us. So, I really do feel like she had unhealed wounds and I had unhealed wounds coming into this. I noticed, like, certain things I say, if I say it a certain way, she a firecracker. And instead of me getting mad and, retaliating, sometimes I have to realize, like, okay, maybe if I avoid, because somebody has to be the bigger person in this situation. Somebody has to be the nurturer and the healer, until, the other person is ready to be that nurturer and healer. And more times than often, we think, as men, we think that the women are just supposed to be like the nurturer and the healer. If we're the head, or supposed to be the head, sometimes we got to take that, in stride and just say, you know what, listen, let me be the bigger person. Let me, because if I know if I get her right, then maybe, we'll be right. So sometimes we just got to take the back seat and stop being so prideful. In certain situations, I'm talking about myself, nobody else. But sometimes I just, being a sweat man, my cousin knows exactly what the reputation of sweat men are. Um, we we have a reputation, but at the same time, you know, it's just sometimes we just got to step back and say, you know what, like she needs me more than my pride right now. So,
Hmm. That's a good point. I'm glad you said that because a lot of times in situations too, we it was afraid I forgot how they put this. It was like, what's more important in this moment, right? Getting your point across or the person. So sometimes you really want to say it and you really want to get it out, and you know whether they wrong, you want to get it out. But it's like, okay, in this situation, if we want to diffuse it, if we want to, you know what I'm saying, have a healthy conversation. What's more important to me right now, you or getting my point across? And I think sometimes when we ask ourselves questions like that, we can kind of diffuse and have a healthy conversation versus I'm right, you wrong, or you know whatever the case may be. Um, and another thing, I didn't send this question to y'all, but another thing is the narrative. When we talk about controlling the narrative and having our own narrative, especially in the Black community, a lot of times we pit Black men and Black women against each other. So we talk down about Black men. And I believe, I'm saying this because I believe a lot of these are trauma responses or based off a lot of times outside forces that make us pit ourselves against each other when really we need to be in community, building each other up. And that has upheld a lot of our, that has stopped a lot of us from having healthy relationships, especially romantic relationships with one another, because we tear down Black men. Um, Black men, not everybody, but sometimes Black women tear down Black men. Sometimes Black men tear down Black women, whether it be, you know, she just want me for money or he ain't nothing, he ain't doing nothing. And then it creates this narrative of all Black men are worthless and all Black women only want this. And then that kind of snowballs into other things. Do either of you want to speak to that or have any comments or anything you want to share about that narrative? Because that's one narrative that I completely just want to get rid of. But do either of you have any input on that?
When I say we have this conversation every single session when I am working
Oh,
with
wow.
women of color, every single time. And what it really literally boils down to is most of the world do not look at other people through a trauma-informed lens. Because if we did, we wouldn't look at a Black man and say, I can't date Black men, they're too hard. We would say, what happened to him to make him that way? Like, we're asking the wrong questions. It's not why is he that way, it's what happened. And when we think about Black, I hear a lot of guys tell me I can't date Black women because they crazy. Are they crazy or are they damaged and nobody's giving them space to heal? Because I can't superwoman and heal at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to give some space for that to happen. But if we start looking at the world through a more trauma-informed lens and we approach people with grace and approach people with a lens of why and not what, then we would have a better understanding of why different groups of people within a culture will begin to define each other in such a negative manner.
mm-hmm.
Because I've worked with groups of people, when I say every color and pigmentation you can think of, it is way more prevalent in communities of color than anywhere else.
I believe that.
We typically, and part of it is trauma creates a situation where we want to blame. We need someone to be responsible for our damage. Because, and part of it is us just needing it to be not our fault. But the bigger part of it is us needing to be able to explain to someone what we're feeling and what we're experiencing and not having the words to do so. Because in some instances, we don't know what's happened that's caused us to respond a certain way. I just know that I don't date brothers. Okay, but why? Have you taken time to investigate in yourself? What is it in you that has made you cut off an entire faction of the human population?
Right.
You haven't met every man of color. Like, right. What is going on? What happened that would make you just in your mind decide that this group of individuals is of no benefit to you? Mm-hmm. And until we take time to sit with ourselves and figure out the source of the damage, and then to start to address the damage, we're going to forever view each other in a critical way. I'm like, we gotta change the lens through which we see people. We gotta stop looking at the what, and start looking at the why. Why is this happening? Why are they doing that? Why am I responding to them in this way?
That's good. That's heavy. That's good. That's heavy. And along those lines, I think some of that goes back to the intergenerational trauma as well. Because we trace back things that have happened, whether someone saw, or every man you're with left you, your dad left your mom. Even going way back to the Middle Passage, going back to our families being broken apart and the women and men being separated, and they couldn't help us. They couldn't do anything for us, right? That hurt and that pain from that. Going back to housing laws being changed, and I'm on public housing, and my man can't be here, so now my family is torn apart. And what do I do now with my children, with me? And now I can't depend on this black man because he can't even be in the house with me. So it's so many, even through the different time periods of where our families have been broken apart. Black men have not been there where we felt like they needed to save us or help us, or we felt like we had to hold the house down because they were inadequate. And I'm not saying that they were. I'm saying that is the lens that it was black men are inadequate. Black men can't hold jobs, not knowing that he was uh, with no evidence found guilty of a felony. Now he can't get a job, or he got caught with some weed, and now white men and women are making billions of dollars off of it, and my man can't get a job because he got a record, and now he can't provide for the household. Now I'm mad at him. And it's not just that, it's so many other things, and that creates trauma. I mean, that is trauma because it's almost like there's no way out. And then our black men are living with trauma because they're seen as a threat as soon as their foot hit the pavement. They're seen as a threat when they're just trying to get a job. They're just trying to buy a jacket out the store. They're just trying to bag a bag of chips. They're just trying to get a black. And now they're shot. They're dead. They're arrested. A 10-year-old steals a bag of chips, and now he's in handcuffs. When if it was a little white boy, and he may have gotten a pat on the back or a conversation, and now this is creating cycles and generations of trauma. And I did not mean to. I got on my soapbox a little bit because I swear I definitely
No,
wanted you to say that, but what
that's
you just
perfect.
said, Michelle, made me think of all of those things.
As somebody who I one of my degrees is in history, and I tell people all the time that the condition of the American experience for men of color is not an accident.
Oh no.
It's not an accident. Everything in history pointed us toward this. And unfortunately, because of all the generational barriers and because the narrative was passed down and accepted, this is the hand that we've been dealt.
Mm-hmm.
So until people of color start to stand up and say, we're going to take control of our own narrative, not only through word, but through action, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna run. I'm gonna run with this because this is conversations that I have with the fellas all the time. If you take us back to slavery, right? Let's go back there. Let's start there because that's where we can, kind of pinpoint. The black man was humiliated in front of the black woman to make him seem weaker and make her seem stronger. If we understand that we're seeing that history has repeated itself time and time again, today we live in a time where the separation and segregation of black families, the men and women in families, is at an all-time high because the phrase NAS, we know it, right? Is so it's so common. It's commonly used. You know what I'm saying? Where brothers ain't, whatever the case may be. So once we put that in today's time, you see a lot of women are getting their degrees. They are, you know, I'm talking about self-sufficient, independent women, this, that, and the third, which they push that narrative so much where sometimes the superwoman feels like, dang, I don't have that. So I have to be barbaric. I have to be muscular. I have to be that. And to a man, an educated woman sometimes is a good thing. And to him, sometimes can be a bad thing because if she feels as though she's smarter than him, she can talk down to him, say certain words to him, make him feel like, dang, I didn't have the education that you did. I work with these, not this. Like, you know, most of the time, we were taught that as long as you use these, you will always have a job. You see what I'm saying? So we felt like college wasn't, you know, the thing because, you know, we seeing like construction workers, this, that, and the third. I used to weld. Guys make 35 an hour. Ain't got no college education whatsoever. You know, people that do home repairs, mechanics, this, that, and the third. They don't, they work with this, right? So if I'm coming into a situation where I have an educated black woman and, you know, she's throwing around, I'm speaking from experience, and she's throwing around words that I'm like, what's that? At the same time, it kind of shows it's like, it kind of intimidates. Like, I don't want to say the wrong thing around her. I don't want to, you know, because I don't want her to tell me a new threat. Like, that's not how you use that word or anything like that. So, you know, that creates a, you know what I'm trying to say? That creates a,
Like a barrier?
yeah,
Or,
sort of, you know, like between having a conversation. So we can't sit down and have these conversations because I feel like, you know, like, yeah, I might say the wrong thing or, you know, you might tear me apart or, you know, that's not the, or if you meet somebody smarter than me, you might, you know, that's the thoughts that run across a lot of our heads. Social media, you know, the back then we looked at people in the community, right? We looked at, you know, the people that did good in the community. Those were our heroes. Those were the people that we wanted to be like, you know what I'm saying? Everybody progressed. You got to think about it. Back then, our families owned homes. Nowadays, we're in apartments, we're in condos, we're in stuff that we don't own. I know I'm getting off topic, but I'm kind of, you know, keeping on the same. You still looking at it like that. I was talking about it earlier, and I'm like, our grandparents owned their homes. Why is it that we make more than they do, and they did, and we don't own half of nothing? You know, we're not understanding the black dollar. We're not understanding who we are. We're not understanding that us working together is better than working apart. Saying brothers ish and women ain't ish, that's supposed to be far from where we at. You know, we supposed to have Black Wall Street again right now, and we have the resources and everything to do so, but it's social media the popular. It's not popular to do those things. Or we're in an instant gratification time right now where it's microwavable. You know what I'm saying? Everything needs to be instant. Instagram showing, you know, like quick fix. You know what I'm saying? People out here going on trips, this and the third. You sitting at home, you on your phone, you looking, you're like, dang, they doing this, they doing that. But you're not understanding that some of that stuff is a facade. Television is a facade. The picture that they're painting us and painting us to be is completely wrong. So once we stop using that as entertainment and we grab our stuff back, I think we can do wonders. On that topic. Sorry, I was long-winded.
no, that was good. That was good. That was, and we need to hear more from black men and to really hear them and hear y'all and not listen to y'all so that we can respond to you. Because a lot of times we get in conversations with black men And we like, okay, like, I'm gonna let you talk, but I'm just letting you talk. So, and I'm not really trying to understand what you're saying. I just want to let you talk so I can go ahead and say something back to you. And
Mm-hmm.
that is just like, we can't go anywhere from there. Especially speaking from the, dudes ain't nothing, women ain't nothing. It is so much, like you said, it's so much we could do if we work together and get away from this narrative of just using one another for whatever we need at the moment. And just establishing like real relationship versus I'm gonna get what I can. And also to speak to the whole, if a woman is more educated or whatever, that is twofold in my opinion, because one, we as women have to be careful how we speak to anyone, but it's one, especially our children, our men, because you can really tear people down. And I think that goes back to, again, we talking about getting to the root of trauma. I think a lot of times women feel like we have to prove that we are good enough. We feel like we got to prove that we know something. We feel like, and it's a lot of times it's not that we are trying to hurt you. Not all women now, but some people, it's like we have to prove like, no, I am good enough. I do know this, because in the outside world, outside of the home, we have to prove ourselves all the time, every day. We got to do more work than everybody else to show that we can do things and that we are really educated. And sometimes, unfortunately, we carry that back home, and we feel like we got to prove that to our man. We got to show our children, like, I can do this, I can do anything. Really, sometimes we need to sit down somewhere and calm down, honestly, and not put, like, do not tear each other down. Okay, this man doesn't have a college degree. Like, I saw an interview, and I might be going somewhere else now, but I saw an interview, and um, this woman was saying she couldn't date a dude that had a 9 to 5 because she wanted to go on vacation and be able to pick up and leave. And I'm like, girl, have you ever dated an entrepreneur, really? Because I don't know many entrepreneurs in general, whether they be male, female, or identify, whatever they identify is, that can pick up and leave either. Because entrepreneurs, that's like going from 9 to 5, and nothing against 9 to 5, because I work a normal job and I have a business, but entrepreneurship is all day, every day. It's no turn off. So if that man has meetings, or he has a big deal coming up, or he's working on a big project, he can't get up and leave either. Like, what are you saying? What puts less value on a man that has a 9 to 5 versus a man that's an entrepreneur? And what do you do that you can just, what I'm saying? Like, it's just very, I think we base, like you said, so many things off social media. I just want to pick up and go. Okay, it's not a lot of people that can do that. If you want to be realistic, it's not a lot of people that can pick up and just go. And there's so many things I can say about that. I'm gonna leave it there because we have other things to talk about. But you have to be realistic, like you said, and stop trying to live your life based on what you see on social media. Because it's people going on vacation and don't have no home to come back to. They sleeping on somebody's couch or sleeping in a car. It's people doing all types of unsavory things to get to those things. So it's like, do you have integrity? It's so many things we can deal with there. So I'm gonna just leave it there, but just be careful with those narratives and how you speak to people, period. Because the world a lot of times teaches us to tear each other down because they don't value us, but we have to value each other enough to say, I got you, boo. I'm gonna work through this with you. I know you're going through a hard time right now. I got your back. I'm gonna help you however I can. Because we're not always gonna be up,
Mm-hmm.
and we gotta be there to support each other. That's why I also don't like the 50-50 thing. And if y'all do, it's no offense, but I don't believe in relationships being 50-50. I don't believe in certain things because I might be a 20 one day and I need you to be my 80.
That
Right? I
part.
might be operating at 50. I might be, but I need you to be the other part of that, and vice versa. It goes both ways. So the same way we want men to hold us down when we need to be able to hold them down. And when they're at 20, we need to be able to push them as well, and not be like, oh, you can't find out. No, that's the last thing that man needs to hear when he is doing his very best to make a better life for you and his family. So
And I said,
that's all I'm gonna say about that.
one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be quick and brief with it. So the biggest influences for black men right now are musicians and music. And what
Mm.
does music do? It tears. You talking about dope, talking about women, you talk about this, that, and the third. The biggest influences of women are most your IG models, your rapper women, musicians, and what are they doing? They're flaunting their body. So these are the two things that the media has projected to us. Well, not just us, but the masses of us, that this is what you have to be, or this is the American dream for you. Real, like Housewives of Atlanta. What's the other show? Like stuff like that. They drive the
Mm.
entertainment to make you feel like this is where you're supposed to be. And some people can't watch it just strictly for entertainment. They try to become.
Mhm.
So.
That's a good, and that goes back to the whole slavery piece of the commodification, like commodifying our bodies. So you're only good for entertainment. You're only good to have babies. There's so many women striving to be a baby mama to a rapper so they can get paid every month. It's going back to commodities. We're now commodities. We are entertainment. We are ball players. We are this. We are that, and that's what we only think our true value is going to be seen if we're rapping, if we somebody baby mama, if
Mm-hmm.
we, and it's just not. Again, we got to take that narrative back. I'm gonna just read some comments real quick. Somebody asked to say a poem, but I don't see him anymore or see her. Come on, him anymore. Um, Nolita, my friend Nolita, she says also really important to recognize everyone shouldn't have access to your narrative and to protect your peace. I think that
Say
is a very good point. You have to
say
protect
that.
your peace. Tasha says she's so happy this conversation is taking place, and we might have to do like a part two or something because it's just so many things. Y'all have dropped so many gems, and there's so many things we can touch on just on like one of these questions alone. We could talk for hours about. So again, I'm so grateful for that. Michelle, I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that as well.
Um, the one thing that just keeps resonating with me the whole time you all have been talking is that all of this really boils down to the fact that people don't realize that most of them are responding to a traumatic event, and the first thing you experience is that loss of safety and security. So whether it's I'm going to find a man and I want a baby so he can pay my way, or I ain't marrying a man that can't provide me more than a 9 to 5, or what, it's all boiled
Mm-hmm.
down to security. They want to feel that sense of safety that they lost at whatever point it was that they experienced that trauma, whether it's my mama didn't want me, or the boyfriend I was so in love with didn't want me and he threw me away. So I have to find they think it's, oh, I just want my peace. No,
Mm-hmm.
what you want is to feel safe. You want to feel protected, because at the end of the day, that's the essence of the human experience. We want to feel safe, protected, and as if we belong.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't feel, and most people are literally looking for those three things, they just don't realize they are. And then once they get that wealth or have that baby by this man who they thinking about them, the reason they keep hopping from person to person and bed to bed and situation to situation is because that money is not going to make you feel better. That money is not going to fix that emptiness that you feel. Sitting there with that baby is not going to make you feel that void either.
Mm-hmm.
You, until you can deal with your stuff,
Mm.
none
Come
of that
on.
none of that none of that stuff on the outside is going to matter.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we got people out here wealthy committing suicide, because
Yeah.
stuff don't fix damage.
That's right.
There's no price tag. There's no, you can't pay your way out of trauma.
Okay.
And I think that's what's hard for a lot of people, because I'd rather pay my way out of this, or I'd rather go buy this and hope it makes me feel better. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know you thrift too. I see Coach bags and all kind of stuff in the thrift store. You know why? Because people buy them and they don't feel the void, so they move
Mm-hmm.
on, and they just keep going and going and going and continue to feel more and more empty, because nobody wants to take that mirror and turn it around. Yeah, it's cute to go look in the mirror and see all that stuff on the outside, but until you turn that thing around, it's never gonna get better.
That's good.
Sorry.
Oh, they go Trey. Hey, Trey. And I'm glad you said that, Michelle, because when we have to get to the root of it, and that is that is the conversation. That is the thing that really want to press tonight is all these things are exactly what you just said. All these things are just manifestations. They're just outward showings of what we haven't dealt or gotten to the root of. So the relationship between men and women, the way we treat our children, the way we see ourselves, the reason why there's a block when we try to form a relationship is because there's something that we have not gotten to the root of. So we start to buy things and do things to try to cover it up. But if you never get to the root of it, it's just going to keep growing. It's just going to keep going. Like Nolita said in the comments, it's just a cycle that's just going to keep having. It's like you got a deep cut that needs stitches and you just keep slapping a Band-Aid on it thinking that it's going to heal. It's not going to heal. It's just going to fester. It's going to get infected. It's just going to get worse. And we have to get to it. And that also made me think of Maslow's hierarchy.
Yes.
And oftentimes, again, going back to the Black community, many people in our community don't even get that bottom level of just basic needs. So it's hard for us to go further because we haven't even just got on the bottom rung of the ladder. We don't have anywhere safe to go. We don't have food. We don't have clothing. We don't have a safe space. So it's hard for me to get other things when I don't have those basic things covered. It's hard for me to even imagine anything beyond that because I'm still struggling to just figure out what I'm gonna eat that night. So
In the world of resilience, we refer to that as the wise owl and the barking dog. And the barking dog is all that aggression, that irate frustration that's tied to those needs not being met. So when you trigger somebody, that's the cursing, the yelling, the fussing, that sort of thing. And the first thing we want to do as the co-regulator is try to jump in and issue reprimand. Stop that. You shouldn't be talking about, you shouldn't be doing that. But that's a wise owl conversation. You're trying to have a rational conversation with somebody who's not in a rational space. In that moment, you need to be trying to help them meet that basic need that's necessary to calm them. So at that time, you're not trying to reason with them. You're trying to help them calm down. And once they're calm enough to begin to explain to you what the need is, then the wise owl flies back and then you can have those rational conversations. But what we tend to do in general is we want to say, you shouldn't be. You should be over that. That should be done. That you should stop that. Everybody has problems. That's a wise owl conversation. You talking to a barking dog. That's like apples and oranges. That's going to do absolutely nothing. We have to start meeting people where they are. And so if I'm dealing with somebody who's hungry, I can't have a conversation with them about why they were irresponsible with their money so they don't have a grocery budget. I need to help them feel that hunger first. So then we can sit down and start talking about how we can plan to make sure this doesn't happen again. But we got to stop skipping that stage. We got to remember, we got to start calming that barking dog, meeting those basic needs before we start trying to help people problem solve to deal with the issue.
That's good. That's good. And that's as soon as you start talking about that's it. Meeting people where they are. Instead, because like you said, we try to offer, this is what you need to do, and that can often escalate it even more. Now they tuning you out. Like, I don't hear nothing you got to say because this is what's happening now. I'm mad now. I don't want to hear you telling me, oh, you shouldn't have did this. You shouldn't. Nobody wants to hear that at a high emotion time. We need to get this resolved, and then that is so, I'm sure to you really simple, but that's so profound because often we're so quick to tell people what they do or do not need to do when we need to just have a little bit more compassion, a little bit more empathy and say, okay, what's really going on with you? Let me get you straight in this moment. And then later, let's talk about how we can move forward and make better choices or move forward and have some kind of plan in place. And then along those lines, since we're kind of going into that, Michelle, what are some ways or some practical things we can do or some practices we can put in place to work through our trauma? And I know we got Trey in here. So what are some ways we can work through our trauma and kind of prevent ourselves from passing as much as we can prevent ourselves from passing down things to our children or anyone, because everyone doesn't have children, won't have children, just people in under our influence or in our sphere of influence.
One of the most important things I tell people is the first thing you can do, the most important thing you can do on your journey to trauma-informed living is to change that narrative around self-care. When we talk self-care, we got to stop talking about like tropical trips and massages and that sort of thing. The real nitty-gritty around self-care is taking time that you're sitting with yourself to start figuring out who you are, what you need, and how you feel. So a lot of times the reason that we get into these arguments or have these issues with other individuals is because in essence, we don't understand who we are as individuals. At 35, excuse me, I'm still processing now what I like outside of the perfect image of me that I have had to be for my dad, or the perfect image I've had to be for my students at having a decade of experience in a classroom, not being able to fail, being on a pedestal. I had to come to the realization that, hey, I don't like being perfect. I don't like for people to think that I don't make mistakes. I don't like, because that separates me. That puts me out on the island by myself, and I want to be a part of the community. I want to be a part of relationships. I want to be connected to people. But I can't find that if I'm not taking time to sit with myself. And another part of self-care that I think is so important that we often struggle with sometimes, that helps us to not heal, is acknowledging that maybe sometimes the things that people say about us have some kind of truth to them. So for me, one of the things that, and my husband used to say it all the time, used to drive me up a wall, is that I'm controlling. And once I took time to sit with myself and process the fact that this man loves me, he's not being malicious. He's telling me this because he's trying to help me see something. But when he delivered that information, he was talking to a barking dog. So when I had a moment to process that rationally, instead of thinking about what he said, I started going into my why. Why does he perceive these actions to be controlling? Because in essence, I am taking charge of the situation. Okay, Michelle, why are you doing that? At what point connected to this did you feel like you lost control or didn't have control? And I had to acknowledge that, hey, when I was growing up, I remember the eviction notices. I remember the no lights, the no water. So I feel like I have to know what's in every account at every moment. And once I had time to process that, I could then go have that conversation with him and say, hey, I don't have to control it. I just need knowledge of it so that I can feel a sense of safety and comfort, knowing that I won't have those experiences again. But if I didn't take time to sit with myself and process that, one, the comment was not malicious, and two, try to root it, figure out where it came from, why, if I am doing this, why am I doing it? Then I could begin to truly understand that, hey, no, it's not a bad thing. It keeps us safe. It keeps us in a good place financially. But can I rein in some of my actions around this characteristic so that I'm not being detrimental to those around me? So one of the most important things you can do is really take time to sit with yourself and be open to what people are sharing with you. Remove and take into account who's saying it to you. If somebody is telling me something and I know this person loves me, and take away the idea that they're being malicious, sit with it and process not what they're saying, why are they saying this, and what is it connected to? What in me is producing this, and how can I help the person who I'm connected to understand what this is so we can work so that it doesn't come out in a malicious or damaging way. I know that was a lot.
that was good. I think people in the comments are throwing up the praise hands and saying yes, and agreeing with you. Sweat, did you want to speak to that, or speak to some things that you may be doing in order to not pass certain things to your son or to better your relationships? What are some things that you have put into practice or that you're working on to even better your relationships and, you know, kind of raise your child to be able to have healthy relationships and be able to, you know, kind of navigate life with a little bit less friction?
one thing I said that I was gonna do with Trey that I'm not 100% sure that Cynthia did with me. I'm not 100% sure. Um, but it's allow him to allow him to feel a certain way and be like, boy, shut up, boy, stop, you know, this, that, and the third. And when the baby fall down and he hurts, instead of like it up, yeah, that don't hurt, instead of that, it's like kind of actually showing them, like male love, and understand that male love is strong. Having that. Hey, just having that male love and that male bond sometimes it affects how they grow up. Me having my parents, both my parents. If I didn't have both my parents, I mean, I don't know where would I would have been. You know what I'm saying? Mutt had tough love. Mutt was military. Mutt had tough love. He like, boy, you gotta think about it. He didn't have his father. You gotta think about my pops. He didn't have his father either. So he was winging it with me and my brother. So, but by having him and having that love, I'm like, okay, I can take the bits and pieces that he showed me and put it, but give him my what I think is right. Raise him how I think is. Oh, I just seen. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I'm doing too, Alex. Like, you back, Michelle?
Yes, I'm so sorry, y'all.
It's all
This
good.
tech fun.
Technology, if things happen, I was like, I don't know if her phone died, but someone was asking if you were taking clients or you have a website.
Yes.
And if you click that where you can see how many people are here, you can follow her. You can follow both of them there. If you click, you can see who's up on the screen and you can follow. But if you wanted to share any other information, like a website or anything.
Yes, before I do, if you don't mind, I did want to share the like what we're doing with my daughter too, because I love what Sweat said about giving your children space to feel. And I will say that it will not be universally accepted by the older generation, because my dad gets on me all the time, because we have raised our daughter denied to be able to express to us her feelings, because as somebody who's been in the classroom for a decade, I know what it looks like when you got kids who they've never ever been able to show any kind of emotion but happiness without there being some kind of reprimand. So those are our kids that come to school and they fight 24/7, because when I get mad, I've never been taught what to do. So I just blow up. I just let it peak. So with my daughter, what we've done is we taught her how to communicate around her emotions. So if she's upset, she has the permission to ask us, like, she'll literally say, hey, mom and dad, I'm mad right now. Can I go in my room? Absolutely. Because you, one, were able to express to us what your emotion was, and two, you didn't lose respect for us in communicating that emotion. Because our famous saying in our house is, it's okay to be mad, but it's not okay to be mean. You can feel negative emotions, you just can't project them onto other people. And so teaching her how to deal with those. And or she gets overwhelmed, because she's a virtual student, she'll get overwhelmed with work sometimes. And she's just like, Mom, I need a deep breath walk. We've taught her to go breathe it out, because it's better for you to walk off and get that negative energy or experience out than for you to say something that's going to cause you to receive a negative consequence. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing about that is she understands that it doesn't mean that you don't have to take responsibility for your actions. It just means that we want you to be able to have a productive conversation around them. So go get calm and let's talk about what you did when you get back, and talk about what the consequence is for making that poor choice. So I think it's an absolutely beautiful thing, because for whatever reason, as adults, we feel like it's okay for us to be mad. But if a kid gets mad, it's like the worst thing on the planet.
Right.
I will never understand that. So we
Yeah.
got to get these baby spaces to feel all the feels. That's what we just refer to it as in my history classroom. Feel all the feels. It's
Mm-hmm.
totally fine. And we even established like safe places in my classroom when I was actually a physical classroom teacher, where my kids literally could walk in my room and say, Miss J, I just can't do it today. Totally fine. I appreciate you taking ownership of that. Head over to the D block. They called it the D block. It was the do not disturb zone. And when a kid was over there, they're not to be disturbed. They can do whatever they want to, but they also had been taught how to respectfully not interrupt the rest of the individuals in the space. And for that reason, I was the only teacher in our building who never had fights in their classroom. And I always had to defend the fact that we had this space, but I would rather get one kid back straight tomorrow and caught up than lose a whole class of 30, 40 kids for a day because something exploded that didn't have to. And it also began to establish those safety relationships where we could start rooting some of those issues. What's going on? Let's talk about it so we can fix it. Because I don't want you to not only fight in Miss J's class, not fight Miss J's class. I don't want you to fight nowhere. I want you to have the words to explain what you're feeling so that you can own that. Because fighting as a middle school student gets you suspended, but fighting as an adult gets you in jail.
Yeah.
So let's deal with this here. That sort of thing. Like we got to give those babies space to feel whatever they need to feel, but teach them how to process it in a responsible way.
That's
So
good.
I'm team on board with parents letting their kids feel the feels. Yes.
That's good, and that's so necessary. And my friend Nolita Trinae underscore in the comment, she's a school psychologist as well. She was saying that's how you interrupt generational trauma. You have to do it differently, and I think that's so right, because when you said the older generations, my grandma a lot of times is looking at me like I'm crazy when I let my daughter do certain things, because for me, I allow her to express herself. So again, like you said, people like, oh, one phrase I really do not like is when people say, oh, you a child, you shouldn't be stressed out, or you're a child, you shouldn't be upset. And it's like, no, children may not have bills and things like that, but they do get
Yeah,
stressed
stresses.
out. They do get mad. They get upset. They're human just like we are. So we have to remember that, because then we start dehumanizing our children as if they can't feel all range of emotions just like we do. They're just younger, but they feel things the same way. Um, and it is our responsibility, again, with disrupting those generational trauma, to say, okay, you're upset. Let's talk about it, or take a moment. I let my daughter take a moment. Oh, she gets upset. Hey, take a moment, go lay down for a little bit, go for a walk, go sit outside. But we're going to have to talk about it, because what we also can't do is you take a moment and then it's like it disappears. We start skipping over things. So I think that's good. And Tasha Marie thrifted, and she said the D block. I love it.
When I say they named it, I said this is y'all safe space. How y'all want to do this? They were like, oh, that's the D block. I said, okay, it gotta have a cool name. That's fine.
I love that, and that gives them a sense of community as well. Like, I'm a part of this. I help name that. I have a special place that I can go to, and that's why our village, maintaining our village, is so important, because they didn't get it at home, but they got it in Miss J's class, and they're gonna always remember that. They might be 40, 50 years old. Remember in Miss J's class how they learn how to process their emotions and deal with things, and just take a moment and come back to things. So I think we need more people, and I ain't even go deep into it, but that's why we need more people that look like us in the classroom. That's why we
Yes.
need more people that look like us making decisions about schools, because a lot of times people that do not look like us do not know how to talk and deal with our children. And when they will instigate situations with our children and then blame the children for it, when really things could have been prevented had you spoken to them better. Um, and Tasha said community is big in the classroom, and that's how we build relationships.
Yes.
True. Facts, facts,
But you can't
facts.
teach them if you can't reach them.
I
Absolutely. That's good. Absolutely.
do want to touch on from the male aspect of things, because we have so many of our young men locked up, dead, and messed up situations because of not knowing how to express. the feelings, you know, and them concerns and those concerns. Excuse me, I'm talking country, but yeah, but they we don't, you know, even me at 35, I still get tight. You know, just the other day, I was ready to, you know, and then I looked at him, and then the look that he gave me was just, oh man, he's looking at me, reacting,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so I still have stuff that, you know, I need to have my safe place, and you know, at 35 years old, because I wasn't taught how to express my feelings, or you know what I'm saying, use my words. You know, I took it out in sports, I took it out in fight, I took it out in music, I took it out on other people. Um, instead of, you know, conveying with people and letting them know like I don't like that without feeling like weak. And I need men to understand one thing, expressing, and I need women to understand something too. Just because men express their feelings doesn't make them weak. That makes them strong. A man that can express his feelings is a strong man because he has the courage enough to put them out with, and don't care how much he get ridiculed about. Like he's gonna express how he feels. And you know, I've in my marriage I've been called emotional. I'm a Cancer, whatever. It don't matter, emotional or not. With and that's you know, like not attached, you know what I'm saying? Like emotionally detached, or do you want someone that cares about what they talk about, or you know, that's passionate about what they talk about? Like I'm gonna show my emotions. I'm gonna wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't care. You know, you can judge me or not. I'm one of the ones that say, you know what? I'm me wherever I go. I don't care who's around. I'm not trying to show, you know, showboat, or I'm not sugarcoating nothing. I'm me. I'm straight from the hip. If I something, if I feel some type of way, I'm gonna announce it. I'm gonna read the room first, you know. But I'm gonna say how I feel, you know. I'm not gonna be a mute or just sit back and be like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I got emotions too. I got feelings too. And at 35, sometimes it's still hard to express the way I feel, but I'm learning because I have to learn now, because how I'm going to teach him how to express his if I can't express mine.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I'm glad you said that, especially from the male perspective. I think on one hand, I know we grew up in the same city, so I have so many male friends who I grew up playing football. I used to be a tomboy playing football on Washington Street, playing baseball, hanging out on Bruce Street, that are now in jail or dead because somebody disrespected them. So what they went and shot them. Somebody, you know what I'm saying? You shot up somebody's house. You got, you know, and it's like, had they known, I mean, good from the outside of all again from the outside, you know, people talk about people hood and ghetto, all these things. These are my friends. These are people who looked out for me in school. So I hate that narrative of black men so hard. So these are people that would give me the shirt off their back, and now they're in jail for life because they're not a cold person. They just in that moment did not know how to express. And as a man, a lot of times I seen, you know, when they get disrespected, like, you're not gonna disrespect me and I'm not gonna do anything about it. So now you can kill somebody and now you locked up for life. So we've have in a sense lost two lives because you're gone and they're dead. And I feel so bad, especially seeing the police reports or hearing stuff on TV about men. And I'm like, man, I knew him. He is not any of those things. You know what I'm saying? But that is the narrative that is now created against a man who may have been great, but because that one moment he couldn't control his emotions, now his whole life has changed and somebody's life is
Um,
gone.
because I'm not meaning to cut you off, cuz, but on both,
I'm good.
because you got to think about it. The person that disrespected him, or you know, and just in the scenario, we never think about, you know, what they went through, or you know what their problem was, or anything. um, we see the aftermath and we question the aftermath and not, you know, what happened up to that. Because I've had situations with, you know, partners of mine where it could have went left. And I'm talking about these are the guys I know from the sandbox. It could have went left, but me being the person that say, you know what, me having a conscious mind and saying, you know what, it don't make me no punk, no nothing, but me having a conscious mind and saying, you know what, it's something deeper rooted. Man, what's going on, bro? Like, talk to me. You know, one of my partners, in Baltimore, like, I'm talking about like one of my partners, right? We had a situation, you know what I'm saying, where we were dealing with each other, but then we stopped dealing with each other. And it was something that got mixed up, you know, a conversation that got mixed up, this, that, and the third. We were about to go to blows um, about this. And then we had the conversation like, yo, what's going on? Like, what's really going on? And as men, we hashed it out. And we've been rocking every day since. So, you know, certain situations, because Ree even told me, she was like, you really about to fight over shoes? And I'm like, that it had nothing to do with, you know, like the sneaker, because, you know, that's my business. But I was like, it had nothing to do with that. It was more off of a respect thing. And I'm like, we were about to come to blows, like seriously. Like I called him, I'm like, yo, meet me. You know, I was on the way and then something clicked in. I was like, it's crazy. So if me not having that conscious mind, you know, I carry. So, you know, me not having a conscious mind and thinking about it, it could have went worse for, and you know, I'm not that type of person, you know, speaking of like, you know, and that person is not that type of person, but we're not going to tolerate the disrespect. But at the same time, somebody in that situation say, you know what, I can't take another black man's life, or I can't create beef for no reason. And some of these killings and stuff that happen is senseless because we're taught that nobody's supposed to push you over, this, that, and the third. Sometimes you gotta just talk it out, hash it out. You know?
That's good. That's good. Communication. It's
Communicate.
communication is such a big thing. And that goes back like being able to openly say something and not feel like if I say this, he gonna think I'm a punk. Or if I say this, he gonna think I'm soft. Like, no, just put it out there because that could have went a totally different way than what it went. Like you might not be sitting here with us. You know what I'm saying? It could have went way left. And I know we usually do an hour, so we're gonna start wrapping up because again we could go all night. I'm sure we're gonna wrap up at 11. It's 10:53, so we're gonna wrap up at 11. But I'm so glad you said that from your perspective because we need more people to say, you know what? Wait a minute. Let me take a moment and be like, dude, this is my friend. You know, like this is my dude. This is my partner. I ain't about to fight him over what? Because a lot of times it could have been shoes on the surface, but there's something else going on where it may have been the principle of something or, you know what I'm saying, just a miscommunication. So now if we're able to talk, we can be like, man, this ain't even that deep. We good. You know what I'm saying? So I'm so glad you shared that because we have some other men up here as well. And just hearing it a lot of times from you, somebody you can identify more closely with, it'll make you think, and even later on in the situation when you're thinking like, hold up, this ain't even that serious. Let me calm down and let's just talk about it. So I'm so glad you said that. So kind of to wrap things up, again, the basis of tonight was to just get to, and we of course we can't cover it in one night, but to kind of look at some of the roots of our trauma, trace our trauma, and then try to push forward. So it's tracing our trauma to create a bigger picture. So going back to the root. So moving forward, we're able to make better, more informed decisions. We're able to form better relationships, whether it be romantically, whether it be with our children, whether it be with our parents, whether it be with our friends, because we live in community. And we want to have healthy relationships. We also want to take back our narrative. We want to control the narrative of how Black men and women interact with each other. We want to control the narrative of how Black children are raised. We want to control the narrative of how Black culture pushes forward together versus us going against each other. So just getting to the root of things is the main thing, and then practically things that we can do to move forward, because seeing people like Michelle, right, who actively is working in that field and helping people become resilient and work through their traumas, um, it can be inspiring, informational, and see that someone looks like you can feel safe, right? Having Sweat up here, having a Black man to say, look, I'm gonna express myself, and that don't make me no less of a man. I'm going to teach my son how to express themselves. It is changing our narrative, so that we can create a better future for us and the generations that come along. So what I would love for you guys to do, and whoever wants to go first, is to just share like a final thought or something that you want to just share with everybody that's still on, to just encourage or inspire or inform. You just want to share a final thought, please.
Sure. I'll share a phrase with you with all that I shared on a panel recently, and that was, we sometimes, when we were talking about violence and what's happening to people in the Black community, and what I shared with the panel was, we sometimes lose fools, but we often lose those without tools.
Wow.
And every once in a while, we will see someone who leaves this world due to violence or those sorts of things because they just made a foolish choice. They had all the opportunity not to make that choice and they just chose wrong. But more often than not, it's a person who never had the tools to begin with to deal with the issue. So they didn't know what they were dealing with or how to deal with it. But now there are organizations like mine that are out there that we pride ourselves on helping people that look like us get better at doing life and not avoiding trauma. So my organization is definitely here to help and support. Feel free to follow us, because when I say we are doing the work, we are doing the work. So feel free to connect with us. We like to visit with organizations, individuals. We are trying to make it happen, because the day of what happens in the house, stay in the house, is dead. We are done with that. That is killing our Black community. And those of us who are on the front line are no longer having it. So please, please, please follow, reach out. I personally respond to all my emails and DMs myself. So feel free to connect.
Thank you. And for people who want to follow her, if you're not sure how, if you click the little eye where you can see how many people are on the live, the drop down will have us three on the top. So you could just click whoever you want to follow, click, and you'll get more information as well. But Sweat, if you had any final thoughts or anything you want to leave as well, to encourage, inform.
It's something that Jay-Z said that hit me today, and it said, they call us crabs in a barrel, but crabs aren't supposed to be in a barrel. uh, you know, so they put us in the projects and expect us to, because we're not supposed to be there. If we can change the narrative of, calling ourselves hood niggas, and excuse my language, but calling ourselves hood dudes and ghetto chicks, if we can change that narrative, then maybe that'll put less stress and strain on being able to open up and talk. I think I said that right. I think I said that how I need to, but just being able to, find your person, find someone. It doesn't even have to be, opposite sex. So it could be the same sex. Find someone that you can kind of confide in to, express those feelings. Everybody needs somebody, you know, um, to reach out to. Fellas up here, if you just need to reach out to me, like, I'm all ears, I'm with, what I'm saying, men fellowship, and, not in a church type of setting, but just like talking real, like brotherhood. So, you know, that's my final thought.
Thank you. I appreciate both of y'all so much. Thank you to everybody who hung up on it. I know we usually an hour, but this conversation, it was just so much and we had to say. And even now we still haven't, it's so many other things we could have said. So hopefully you guys can come back at some point and we can do a part 2 to this, because there's so many other things that we can talk about. So I'll be so honored and grateful if you guys can come back at some point for a part 2, as well as everybody was hanging with us tonight. Thank you so much. The goal here, again, we're here every Tuesday at 9:30 talking about various topics. The overall goal is to create a safe space for people that look like us. It's to create a safe space so that it's called the vent. It is called the vent for a reason, to get it off your chest, to get it out, to share in a place where you'll be loved, where you'll be well received, not talked down on, but it's community to know that you have support, you're heard, you're seen, and we're taking back our narrative and building back our communities and our people so we can create a better now and a better future. So thank y'all again so much for coming on. Thank you for everyone that was here. We'll be back next week. I don't know that we can do a part 2 next. I don't know if it's gonna be next week, because everybody's schedule
I'm
is different. But we would definitely have a part 2, and I will definitely let y'all know when. But I appreciate y'all so much for just coming in, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience, being vulnerable, being open, because that's not an easy thing to do. As well as people in the comments for being vulnerable, even in the comments, and sharing with us. So thank y'all so much. And I will let y'all know about when we will all be back. Because I know everybody has a schedule. And I know that Michelle is packed. So we'll be back. But I appreciate y'all so much. And good night. I know it's late. It's 11:02. Good night. You can make sure you follow Sweat and Michelle, because they have a wealth of knowledge and they are open to speak with you. And we'll see y'all next week. You can also inbox me if you want to. Again, it's community. Like, we're here. So have a good night, everybody. I'll see you. If I don't see you before next Tuesday, I will definitely see you next Tuesday here at 9:30 Eastern Time. Good night, y'all.
good
Good
night.
night. Thank you.